Okay, so I'm very glad to be back at the Abbey and see it all so white and beautiful outside. There's a lot to say about the trip. I went first to Singapore, then to His Holiness's teachings, and then back to Singapore for a couple of days. Since His Holiness's teachings is fresher, I thought I'd talk a little bit about that first. So this was the third year that His Holiness has been doing the oral transmission, or the Tibetan word is lung, for the 18 Lamrim texts. And so this year he focused on the Jamar Lamrim and on Pabonka Rinpoche's liberation in the palm of your hand, Namdro Lakchen. And so he, in a lung, he will give some commentary, but very often he is reading the text and reading very quickly, so the Tibetans would follow along. Many of them follow along in the book. We have a translation of the of Pabonka's text, but we only had a partial translation of the Jamar Lamrim. So we did the best we can, and then the translator, read whatever they could while His Holiness was reading. But then His Holiness would also stop and give some commentaries too. And one thing that was very interesting for me is that the Namdro Lakchen, the liberation of the palm of your hand, was one of the first Lamrim texts that I learned, and one of the ones that my teachers relied on, because it's very, very popular in the Tibetan community. It was Pabonka Rinpoche's teaching before some people took tantric initiation, and then Trichon Rinpoche, the previous Trichon Rinpoche, took notes on it and then wrote them up and made it into a book. Okay, so it was given in a very Tibetan context before tantric initiation, to a group of monks predominantly. And his outline is generally like the one that J. Rinpoche uses in Lamrim Chenmo, but he also adds, for example, in the section relying on the spiritual mentor, he adds some more sections. He talks about it longer. The preliminary practices, the 6 preliminaries, he goes into them in much more detail. In J. Rinpoche's text, he goes in, his text is really weighted towards the insight section. Pabonka's text is weighted more towards the preliminaries and earlier meditation section. So it's very interesting for me to listen to this again and see the difference in style between how J. Rinpoche presents things and how Pabonka Rinpoche presents things. Okay? And then, of course, we had many shorter Lamrim texts last year that he gave the lung on. And the Jamar Lamrim, I think, is longer too, but again, I couldn't look at the whole text of that and see to compare it, so we didn't have the whole English translation. But I really saw for myself that my mentality prefers J. Rinpoche's presentation. Pabonka's presentation is, he goes into all these stories, and some of them are kind of fantastic. Did you find that too? Yeah? And so some of the stories are really nice, but some of them are a little bit fantastic, because they're suited for a Tibetan audience who find humor in things that we don't find humor in, and vice versa. And also because we, as Westerners, we tend to take things very literally. In the Tibetan culture, I don't know how much they take some of these stories literally, or how much, they see it as metaphors, but in any case, they don't have trouble with some of these stories the way some of us have trouble with the stories. And also I saw another difference is that Pabonka's, his presentations are weighted much more towards making you very concerned about your negative karma and the possibility of being born in the lower realms. He really emphasizes that. Yeah, whereas Jay Rinpoche, talks about karma and so on, but that isn't the emphasis, and it isn't he doesn't put the way he talks about it is a little bit different. With Pabonka, it's more kind of, you get this sensation of fear, whereas Jay Rinpoche is just look at this and consider it and, see what happens. Problem is I can't get to my nose with this thing, I have to wipe this too. Maybe I can hang it here like that. Yeah, now it's a good position. I can easily get at it. Now his nose itches. Okay, so so it was a different style of presentation, and I was talking with Serkom Rinpoche about it. He's about 30 years old, and just kind of noticing the difference in presentation. And he commented, the Pabonka's text is so much written for Tibetans, and it's for people who came from a nomadic environment, who were out in the fields, and for them to really care about Dharma, you had to wake them up and talk about the hell realms, otherwise they just kind of wouldn't care. And it was so nice to hear him say that, because, like I said, I've been studying this text for years, and, some of us Westerners thought that maybe before, but you couldn't actually say it because our teachers at that point really said, no, these stories are accounts of things that happened, and, and they talked about the hell realms for a long time. And, and to hear Rinpoche just kind of said, no, this is a text written for Tibetans, was just really nice. That it doesn't mean that we don't pay attention to what's written in the text. It just means how we pay attention to it can be altered according to our own, culture. Of course, Jay Rinpoche talked about the same topics, but maybe his emphasis or his language was a little bit different. And so I was discussing this with some of my old Dharma friends, too, who I saw there, and we were all saying, because for us now, even hearing these fantastic stories and something is just it doesn't bother us anymore. We've been hearing them for 30 years. We know how we ourselves understand them, and like that. So that was one thing, just putting something in a cultural context that I found very, very nice and very refreshing compared to when I was new to it all and none of us had any cultural context to it. So that was one thing. Another thing that really touched me in these teachings, and again, I've heard them many, many times, but each time you hear something, you hear it differently and it affects you differently. And here's one place where Pabonka again went into the long story of how Buddhism came to Tibet, with this one king inviting him and having to go to prison, for inviting Lama Atisha to come, and then his nephew trying to ransom him out, and it also invite Lama Atisha and collect enough gold, the weight of this king's body, and then of course traveling over the Himalaya mountains to invite Lama Atisha and convincing the people at Vikramasila, that's where Atisha was at, please let him go, let him come to Tibet. And I just hearing that, and this time more than previous times, I really felt the connection with these people in the past who, due to whose sacrifice and efforts, we're able to hear the Dharma today. You know? So these people who lived centuries ago, they didn't know us. Yeah. We weren't even born in this life. Who knows whoever we were in that time. But because they cared for future generations of people, then they really wanted Lama Atisha to come and help restore Buddhism to Tibet after King Longdama had devastated the Dharma and the Sangha there. And just thinking about what they went through, and it was not an easy job. It was not an easy task to do it. And it made me also think of Xuanzang and many others from China who similarly made the journey over the Himalaya mountains. And then the many people who are the unsung heroes who died on the journey to India or died on the journey back from India to Tibet or to China. And how our opportunity to hear the teachings depends on all these people braving the incredible physical difficulties that they had to go through to learn the Dharma and to bring it back to their own countries. And comparing that to now, you just get on a plane and okay, a transoceanic flight is not much fun and I usually feel sick afterwards. But comparing to what they went through, this is like peanuts. You get the best acoustics on my cough too, huh? But yeah, and just, really feeling the kindness of people who didn't even know us. Yeah, but they loved the Dharma and they thought about future generations of people who could benefit and how much we owe to these people, and what they went through and the kind of gratitude to give to them. And when we think of that, then it really helps our Dharma practice, because rather than take the teachings for granted, we feel more of a responsibility to practice, and to do our share in upholding the teachings for future generations.